Hey everyone, I was recently taking a shower and I had loads of weird thoughts, and I realised that if some evil hit squad broke into my house and cut the power and the internet, then I'd probably end up dead, but at least my key computer equipment would still be running, and then my widower would have CCTV footage of my murderers, which wouldn't be much consolation, but with surging hardware prices, I kind of feel like a UPS is one of the most boring but essential purchases you can make right now, and this video isn't sponsored in any way, but I've got two UPSs, and I kind of feel like they are a really important purchase, but there's some things you need to know before you just randomly buy one, which I wanted to talk about in this video. And UPS stands for Uninterruptible Power Supply, so it's basically a big box with a battery inside of it. Although the battery's not always user replaceable, which is a bit of a gotcha, and I'll come back to that point later, but basically you plug all your devices in there, and then if there's a power outage, those devices aren't going to immediately die because of the battery in the UPS. You know, you won't get a harsh shutdown that loses all your work or your gaming progress. And equally with your NAS or your servers, you're not going to have some harsh shutdown that's going to cause data corruption or potentially actually ruin your hard drives or your NVMe drives, which obviously cost a lot of money right now, so it's good to protect them where you can. And it's not just brownouts or blackouts that are a risk. Basically, after those, you can have power surges where there's too much voltage coming into your house, and that can actually cause issues with your devices as well. And Reddit is actually full of examples where an outage or a power surge has actually, destroyed hardware and cost potentially thousands of dollars of damage. But I should say that that's probably the exception, not the rule. Like in general, we've probably all experienced power outages and lost gaming progress or work, and we've been able to boot back up with no issue whatsoever. But in situations where it could cause issues, I like to protect myself against it, and that's why I've got two UPSs. I got one in my garage where I plug my main home lab NAS into, and that protects my main data and my content creation and my Plex library and things like that. And then in this study, I've got another UPS, and I plug in like my network switch and my CCTV NAS, and a few other devices as well, which basically means that if we have a power outage that then obviously knocks out the internet as well, my CCTV cameras continue to record, which I think is actually pretty cool. But equally, a UPS isn't some magical device that's going to protect you in every single circumstance, so I'm going to talk about the mistakes in just a minute, but first I need to talk about two other useful features of a UPS, which is graceful shutdowns and surge protection. So most decent consumer UPSs offer surge protection, so just like you can buy a power strip or an extension strip that actually has surge protection built in, many UPSs actually have that built in as well. So if there's then a power surge through the electrical grid and into your home, you will be protected through some of this. And I say some just because basically this might protect you from like 310 joules, whereas a dedicated surge strip might protect you up to like 370 joules. Although actually in neither case would you be protected from like, a direct lightning strike to your house. That's going to take out any device, to be honest. But in general, if you are in an area where you do have power outages and then some power surges, then having like a UPS, which obviously has the battery backup and surge protection, can be really useful. The other nice benefit is graceful shutdowns. So basically a UPS, or many good quality ones, is going to have a small data port, and basically you plug a device in there and then you plug the other end of the USB into your computer or your NAS, and then what you can do is actually configure them to automatically shut down if there's a power outage, or you might want to say, shut down if there's more than a 5-minute power outage. So if the lights are simply flickering, your NAS or your computer's not going to suddenly shut down, but obviously it will shut down if there is a longer outage. And you might be thinking at this point, like, what's the point of a UPS? If it's got a big battery inside of it, surely that can allow me to play World of Warcraft all through the night. But in reality, a UPS isn't designed for that, unfortunately. Basically, the battery in here, whilst it is physically quite big, it's not going to allow you to play your games at max capacity for absolutely ages. And that's why it's worth thinking that a UPS is designed to give you minutes of backup power and not hours. But then obviously when the power does come back online, the battery in here is just going to charge back up in the normal way. So actually a UPS is a really clever device, but you need to avoid some common mistakes. First, don't plug too much into the UPS. Because this only has a limited battery life, if you were to plug in like an aircon unit and a space heater and things like that, then if there's a power outage, it might be that this can only last for like 10 seconds or 15 seconds, and then you don't have enough time to like gracefully shut down your computer. Or in the worst case, like this is rated for 400 watts, if I put in an aircon unit that's rated for like 1,500 watts, then what could happen if there's an outage, or what will happen if there's an outage, is this is just going to trip. There's going to be a circuit breaker inside here, and it's going to say, well, I can only output 400 watts. This aircon unit is 1,500 watts, I can't deliver that much power. And what's going to happen then is your computer will immediately turn off, as will your aircon unit and everything else plugged into your UPS. My next Tristan's tech tip though is something I've touched on earlier, and it's the fact that the surge protection in here isn't going to protect you from, massive power surges or direct lightning strikes right next to your home. But if you do live in an area with loads of direct lightning strikes, then you probably do need to look at like a whole home surge protection unit, but also look at, unplugging your computers and your key equipment from the walls completely when there's actually lightning strikes. The final mistake I see some people make is that the power cord on a UPS might not be long enough, so what they then do is get an extension strip and they plug this into the wall, and then they plug their UPS into that. Or they do it the other way around, so they plug a surge strip into here and then plug all their devices into here. But the problem with that is that's a really, really bad idea. If you check the manual for UPS, it'll almost certainly say not to do this, and that's actually for a few different reasons. One of them is that daisy chaining is bad, and obviously this ultimately will have like a power limit that it can't go beyond, and if you've got just too many devices plugged in, then you could accidentally go over that power limit. But also a UPS has something called power cleanup, so basically you could have dirty power coming into your house, and a UPS is designed to kind of clean that up a bit. And sometimes when you start mixing like surge strips or extension strips, that can actually prevent how the UPS cleans up that power, and in doing so you could actually void your warranty. And that now brings us on to what UPS to buy. And instead of you wasting your time, I'm going to be really opinionated and probably offend some people, but in general you've got cyber power UPSs, which are considered fairly budget. Then you've got APS UPSs, which I've got 2 of. They are considered mid-range, and then you've got Eaton, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, or Eaton, and basically they are considered higher end. But in general, there's a big debate, and especially Eaton or Eaton, some of their more recent UPSs have actually been panned in reviews, so what I'm going to do is just put a bunch of links down in the description if you wanted to check out certain well-reviewed UPSs, but other than that, I just wanted to talk through a few factors that you might want to consider before you press purchase on a UPS. And the number one thing to look out for is going to be the capacity or the wattage. So if your gaming computer draws, 600 watts at peak, and you can often look at the CPU and the GPU power draw on a website like PC Power Picker to actually work that out, basically a UPS should offer more than 600 watts. In fact, you often want to go at least 10 to 15% over that. But equally, if you are just going to plug in like a 2-bay NAS from like Synology or Ugreen and maybe a network switch, then you're probably going to be fine because that's going to draw barely any power. Next, you should probably check whether the UPS offers simulated sine wave or pure sine wave, and basically what this refers to is when there's a power outage and the UPS is on battery power, a simulated sine wave UPS can offer slightly choppier power to your devices, and some gaming computers, especially ones that draw loads of power, can actually struggle with that. And ironically, my 2 UPSs are actually simulated sine wave, but because I've got them plugged into lower powered NASs and I've got, Graceful Shutdown set up, I don't actually mind that they are simulated sine wave. But if you are wanting to power your high-end gaming computer through a UPS, then you probably do want to look at a pure sine wave model, but the downside is they cost more money. The next thing to consider is whether the battery in the UPS is user replaceable or not, because some of the budget models actually, it's like an all-in-one UPS, and basically you can't easily replace the battery. And in that situation, what you might find is that your UPS has become e-waste after 3 or 4 years. And the final factor to consider is how many outlets the UPS have, but it is also worth actually looking at the pictures of the UPS, because not all of the outlets actually offer battery backup. What sometimes happens, like with this one, is 6 of the outlets actually have surge and battery backup, and then the other 2 are only surge protected, which isn't actually that bad, but it is just worth knowing that, if you had 8 devices that you wanted a battery backup for, well, a UPS like this isn't going to be suitable for you. And that pretty much covers the main things you need to look out for, and as I mentioned, this video isn't sponsored, I'm not trying to come across as a shill, it's just I got a weird obsession with boring things like UPSs, but I will add some links in the description if you wanted to check them out, and if you've got any further questions, please leave them in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please click the thumbs up button, and please subscribe to see more videos like this.